No worries. That's fine, it's okay. So Chester is home to a multi-generational breeding herd of Asian elephants. The star of this case study in Dali Highway is actually great-granddaughter to our matriarch Thai Highway, so we have quite a natural herd in captivity here. Chester has unfortunately been plagued by EEHV 1A over the years. We've actually lost our last 7 calves, all around 2 years old. Most recently, Ayu and Nandita, who actually died on the same day in October last year. That was obviously devastating for everyone involved. But after each episode, we try to learn from it. We adapt our protocols and improve each time, which we believe resulted in the survival of our latest case in Dali Highway in March earlier this year. So a little bit about our daily husbandry. A huge factor in successful treatment of EEHV, we believe, is a well-established husbandry routine, which we actually practice twice a day, every day at Chester with all our elephants, and with an emphasis especially on the calf treatment. So firstly, here's a nice picture of Indali having her temperature taken, which we do with a laser thermometer. We do that twice a day. We have a very good profile of each individual's temperatures, so it's really obvious if we do get a peak. We know what's normal for that elephant, and obviously a higher temperature could indicate some sort of infection. We've actually found, although at one point temperature records were the only sort of pre-symptom indicator that we used, it has proven to give very, very little information, and definitely not enough to initiate any sort of treatment. But while we are doing that, we also have a good look around the elephant's mouth, and we're looking for any marks or discoloration that's unusual for that particular elephant, and that's quite important. Indali actually has a naturally very light pink mouth, whereas our other calves are actually much darker, which is fine for them as long as it's constant. If we saw Indali with a darker mouth, we would be concerned. And it's the same with behaviour. So we really get to know what is normal for each elephant individually. That includes overnight footage, which was mentioned before. And we really get a sense of when they're not feeling themselves. I have to say though, although this is all good practice generally, in our experience, if we are seeing any symptoms, then it's likely the infection has already taken hold and we are likely to lose the calf within a couple of days. So this is still part of our everyday routines, which we do twice a day. We take the calves into a specially designed calf access area. And you can see in the photo, it's just off our main training pen, through a little cut-through section in the fence line, so that mum can always see, hear and smell everything that's going on in there. We never separate the mums and the calves. And although there is the option to close the calf in there day to day, just practicing our routines, they are free to walk away and leave at any time. So we want to make this area as positive as possible and somewhere that the calves actually really want to be. The purpose of this area is to allow us to get a little closer to the calf safely and practice a treatment routine so that should it be necessary, the calf actually already knows what to expect. And in theory, this should minimise stress and actually increase the chances of the calf going along with treatment purely voluntarily. So in this area, we practice rectal rehydration, injection training, and blood sampling. So here's a nice photo of that blood sampling. In that calf access area, we also take blood samples for EEHV screening, which we are actually fortunate enough to be able to test for on-site, and we can get the result within a few hours. It's thought that EEHV can be detected up to 2 weeks before any physical symptoms show, and we have seen that in the past at Chester as well. It doesn't always have to be a blood sample. We actually find, because we take the samples so frequently, that they can actually get a bit uncomfortable with them. So we do use the lancet method and swab, as long as we get one for a blood sample each week. At the time that Indali tested positive, we were actually taking blood swabs 3 times a week from all the calves, and we really believe that this early detection allowed us to start treatment so quickly and before the virus had a chance to do too much damage to Indali. So another form of screening that we do once a week, although for slightly different reasons, is trunk swabs. We take trunk swabs from all elephants once a week, and this test is actually aimed slightly more at the adults. Our calves, before we have had a positive blood result, have actually never blown a positive trunk swab, but we are looking for shedding in the adults. So it's a really quick video to show how quick and simple this process is. So as I say, that gets sent off to the lab immediately, once a week. And if we get a positive result from a trunk swab, it does mean the elephant has the active virus, but their bodies are dealing with it in the correct way and shedding through their respiratory secretions. At the time that Indali tested positive in her blood, her mother had actually tested positive in her trunk swab earlier in that week. So we were actually on high alert anyway, because we knew that for whatever reason, whatever had triggered it, that virus was more present and active within the herd. Another huge part of being prepared in general is making sure that we're ready to treat at any given moment. So part of our weekly husbandry routine includes a blood plasma donation from our resident bull, Angbo. Angbo is Indali's father. So the theory is that the platelets in the blood plasma effectively patch up any damage done to blood vessels by the virus. But unfortunately, plasma isn't something that we can just order in, and for us, it is quite unrealistic to collect the large volumes that we use in treatment if treatment has already begun. We actually received plasma donations from other UK zoos, but we actually cross-matching with Indali and found that all of the donated plasma was unusable. She reacted to that plasma. Angbo actually still wasn't a perfect match, but he was much better with Indali's blood than the donated plasmas. And this really highlights the importance of that cross-matching prior to the need for treatment. The plasma is banked on site as well. So after all of this preparation, it actually happened. So Indali tested positive in one of our routine screening sessions, and treatment protocol was initiated immediately after that positive blood result was confirmed, so the test was rerun. And this is despite the fact that she was absolutely fine in herself. We had noticed no physical symptoms and no behavioural symptoms either. She was brought into the calf access in her usual routine, so she fully expected to go in there that day as usual. But in there she was given a standing sedation to keep her comfortable, and we went for full treatment that afternoon. That treatment was administered intravenously, and it includes the antiviral ganciclovir, the slow down virus, proteins interferon and zelmate, which we believe stimulate the immune system, the plasma from our bull, as mentioned before, rectal fluid therapy. Just a note on this one, as I say, our methods improve each time we have an episode, but Indali got a significant larger rehydration than in our previous cases. She was actually getting over 50 litres of water each session, so that's twice a day. And of course, while she was sedated, we took the opportunity to take frequent full blood samples to get as much information as possible to monitor her condition. Quite incredibly, Indali actually voluntarily entered the calf access for this treatment for 3 days, so that's 6 lots of standing sedation treatment. However, after day 3, she had obviously had enough. It really wasn't a pleasant experience for her, and she began to get highly suspicious of keepers and entering the area and everyone around her. We were lucky enough that she did re-enter the main training pen, and so we were able to do a full general anaesthetic to continue treatment. This was to be expected, but admittedly at Chester, this was also the first time we'd managed to keep an infected calf alive for over 3 days, so it's the first time we'd actually been lucky enough to deal with this problem. So during the time that she was in the training pen under general anaesthetic, she did need to be kept separate from the herd. And this is the first time that she'd actually been separated from her mother during this treatment. And this was mainly due to the concern that if she was remixed, we wouldn't be able to access her for further treatment. This full treatment was only administered on alternate days, and that was due to the high risk from the anaesthetic itself. On the days in between, interferon was given by DART. This was the first case at Chester in which we'd actually been able to use interferon, and our vets really believed that it could have had a major effect in the survival of Indali. It took Indali's immune system 5 days to initiate a response to fight the virus, whereas, as I said before, in the past, our previous cards actually died within those first 3 days. So you can actually just about see that on this graph. You can see the point at which Indali's own immune system started to fight back. The blue line, the peak in that blue line around day 3, is the blood viral load at Indali's highest, which is around 3 million. Interestingly, on another graph that I haven't included in this presentation, but I do have a copy with me if anyone is interested, we've compared this data with our previous calf Nandita, and found that it follows the exact same viral load pattern until that crucial 2.5 day mark. But in the other case of Nandita, the line continued exponentially, and the calf died by the end of day 3 with a viral load of 60 million. But back to this graph, you can see Indali's viral load dropped at day 3 to around 2 million, where it remained for almost 2 weeks. And this, all of these plots on the graph were taken during the treatment time. This is still a very dangerously high level and obviously a high cause for concern. If we only had this reading, treatment would have almost definitely continued for much longer. It's the other values, however, that really indicate that her body was starting to recover. You can just about see on there, the white blood cell count and ratios both began to recover to a normal or higher level. And that really indicated that her immune system had started to fight the virus appropriately, and she was no longer overcome. We were actually supported by positive trunk swabs that we began to get at this point from Indali, which also suggested to us that the body had begun to deal with that infection normally. So supported by that information from the bloods, and when the risk of dying from the anaesthetic actually became greater than the risk from the infection, the intensive treatment was stopped. This was a really big and quite terrifying and brave decision made by our vet teams. As keepers, of course, we supported that decision, and also we supported that decision considering Indali's mental state. She'd been separated from her mother for a long time now. She was also stressed by the entire ordeal and had started to show some quite concerning behaviours. And we became concerned about the potential lasting effects on her well-being. For this reason, as soon as it was clear that the treatment had been stopped, Indali was remixed with the herd. Understandably, that meant that Indali was not, again, willing to enter the training pen and would not separate from the rest of the herd. She was suspicious of everybody and everything around her, and therefore it was not possible to obtain further blood samples for monitoring. So as a precaution, interferon was administered by DART for the next few days. So Indali today. It took about 2 weeks to build up Indali's confidence again until she was investigating the calf access area and coming into the training pen, which at the time we just managed visual checks. Now she's back to doing her full daily routine. She will go into the calf access area and still presents her ears 3 times a week for blood sampling. The calf access modifications are ongoing. So like I said before, we never actually reached the stage where we had to consider what to do after she started deciding that she wasn't going to enter the calf access voluntarily. And so modifications include making it much larger, and with the possibility of securing a calf safely overnight should treatment be necessary. And this would make it much easier to continue treatment through the slightly safer standing sedation, as opposed to the more risky general anaesthetic. Screening for all the calves continues, although in theory, if Indali was reinfected with this disease, she should be able to fight it off. That's EEHV 1A, but really there are too few survival cases to be certain of this. 1B is still a concern, and discussion is ongoing as to how we would react to a positive blood result for 1B. And this picture at the bottom here, Chest Disease Never Forget campaign, it's actually raised almost £250,000 through public donations, and that's towards the research of EEHV and development of a vaccine, which we're well on our way towards and is our next ultimate goal. That's it from me. 10 questions?